This is in the mandate. They can't just keep on saying we're doing it because they've written it somewhere in a statement and do nothing in practice. Therefore, we need a new accountability framework to hold the Reserve Bank accountable on this constitutional mandate and on industrialization and sustainable employment creation at a mass scale. We must equally build a powerful socialist movement of the workers and the poor that the national chairperson spoke about in his opening remarks. To make this call as one that will make the Reserve Bank accountable to this particular mandate. There must be inclusive development in this country to meet the material needs of our people, the majority of whom are the workers and the poor. And therefore, this mandate for job creation, which should also be within the Reserve Bank, Ndlangamandla, because bakpe a curveball, go to our lead the department, go to our employment and labor. Come to the Communist Party, we will give you the mandate, the strategy for employment creation, not the one that is driven by network industries, as said by the President in his opening speech in Parliament or the Minister of Finance. A clear one. The current one, it's framed within the neoliberal framework. It will never create employment. So they want you to be a failure on this section, so that you can only manage work relations. The task is to create jobs for our people, work for our people, to work for the development of this country, not necessarily to work for the development of industry. Because, yes, Slovo, right, I'm sorry, Ndlangamandla. We're just gossiping. So that I took it out. We should not accept that. You are our leader. You are the leader of the Communist Party. And that must be respected. But again, comrades, for this to happen, it means the National Democratic Revolution must itself succeed. And for this to succeed, the NDR must retain power. The NDR must retain power. This is very important, Comrade Zola. I'm not talking about the ANC or the National Democratic Revolution. If you in the alliance betrays the National Democratic Revolution, the National Democratic Revolution must rise without you. Because this National Democratic Revolution, my comrade, is the comprehensive transformation program in our country, at least to our condition, the best that we have. The best that we have articulated. But we know and we believe this alliance is the main and the only movement that understands this thoroughgoing transformation agenda embedded in the National Democratic Revolution. And therefore, it is important that the alliance sort itself out. The reconfiguration of the alliance must take place, must happen. Because without that, there will be disintegration of the National Democratic Revolutionary Forces. And the project of transformation of our country will finally collapse. We must equally tackle the financial sector transformation. The banks, Comrade King Sibia and others are leading a very important program to litigate against the banks. Because the banking sector in our country is controlled by oligopolies. In other words, by big monopolies, by people who are controlling this sector. The 5 key banks are the main dominant banks in our country. At the same time, Dr. Masondo, in your deployment as Deputy Minister of Finance, you are leading the PIC that has got workers' money, fellow fighter. Why the PIC takes its trillions of rands and banks with commercial banks and doesn't create its own banks? I mean, it's just what's happening in this country. Dr. Masondo, the PIC must create its own bank. Because the banks are making more money. We all know how money is made, how money is generated Although they lie to us, they think that money comes from, I'm not going to talk about this question. I've been speaking about it a lot. They think that that money comes from depositors. That's a great lie of bourgeois banking system. Money doesn't come from there. Money is, the commercial banks makes more money from the money they do not have, guaranteed by the Reserve Bank. The lending ratio, 1:9, where they can borrow 1 rand, every 1 rand that they have, they can borrow 9 rand that they do not have. That's where the money is made by the banks. They create products, mortgages, credit cards, and everything else that you guys get. It's not about what they have as banks. That's the main area. This is revolutionary economics. But bourgeois scholars simply says, no, this comes from the depositors. It's a great lie. So that's why our institution, big institution, on the basis of ability to use this ratio that is available to every other banking sector, must create their own institutions, banking institutions. The people's banks. The transformation of the financial sector is very important. The banks, the financial sector, or what we call the trade associations, the 6 groups, are crazy in this country. They are having a free day because the state allows them. The movement allows them. They do as they please. The insurance group, the banks, the savings group, everyone else. They do as they please because they respect no policy. That is why we need a radical policy change to hold them accountable and also to create alternative institutions ourselves. If you know into this banking sector, the state is having a less say. Even the so-called the land bank doesn't have its own banking license. It banks with commercial banks. The development bank itself. I mean, this is... So, in other words, we do not have public banking system in this country. The ones that we have are pseudo banks. They are not true banks because they bank with other banks. The other thing that we must continue to do as we intensify our financial sector transformation campaign is to make sure that not only do we encourage government to create public banking system, but to also create an enabling environment and foster the possibility for the creation of cooperative banking sector to thrive. The Soweto people can have their own bank. Tusimande, Tokotel. When we started our financial sector campaign, we received a research work, if you remember, that was indicating that Soweto itself, Soweto alone, Stockfells, burial societies, Mikodisano and others were sending to the commercial banks in Johannesburg 64 million rands a week. They could not create their own bank. Even the small bank that was created by black entrepreneurs, the African Bank, is up for sale. It's been condemned to fail. So we have to create these alternative financial institutions and instruments. Again, we must now tackle the banks head on the issue of evictions of people from their homes. This question, comrades, it's unacceptable that a bank can buy a house for 10 rand or 100 rand. And believe it or not, this exists, this is possible, this continues every single day. They buy in their hundreds. This must come to an end. And particularly after they buy a house, after they've evicted the family, they buy this house for 10 rand or 100 rand and then sell the house to a third party at the market value. They profit from injustice. This must come to an end. We must say, comrade, this is pure theft, nothing else, by the banks. And they've been doing it. We must now support the class action so that all the people who have suffered the injustices by the banks of this same attitude must now find justice. And the banks must be punished for this unethical behavior. In fact, We have seen one of the court cases that ruled and returned the family whose house was sold in this form back to their house. But we say this is not enough. The banks and those who are taking these decisions must be criminally prosecuted. We are also, comrades, thinking that we must now elevate this question of dealing with the exorbitant compound interest regime imposed on our people by the commercial banks on home loans and other associated unscrupulous evictions and other financial exploitative measures that they impose on everyone who uses financial instruments in this country. This has to come to an end. And therefore, we must join this class action, Comrade Sibia. Where is King? Yes, we must join. The party is joining this class action with other forces. And it's a big war against the banking oligarchs in this country. We must say, comrades, as we celebrate Comrade Slovo, continue our Red October campaign we launched in October last year on land, food and work, to make sure that we integrate human settlements in both rural and urban areas and dedicate this Red October campaign to the memory of this revolutionary giant, Comrade Joe Slovo, who fought for a caring government and a caring social economic system with proper caring social policies. The measures that we must undertake going forward are such that we take responsibility for our well-being as communities. And the Communist Party has to contribute meaningfully to this particular process. We must therefore mobilize government to work with us, not only to appreciate Comrade Joe Slovo's revolutionary contribution, but to make sure that our people live better, guarantee basic things that we can all do together with our government. But if the government doesn't play ball, we lead in the mobilization of society to do those things ourselves. And therefore, as we do this, we must rebuild our own party. We must rebuild and strengthen the alliance. We must strengthen our Young Communist League. Comrade Takudi, the youth of this country needs leadership. The YCL, under your leadership, as we take this opportunity to also thank the former leaders of the Young Communist League, Comrade Tinyiko and Mabuse, for the work that they've done in rebuilding our Young Communist League. The young people of our country is the greatest wealth this country has. It's pure labor. Now, this is free political education class, although in public, it's not a problem. It's pure labor. Labor is the greatest wealth of all human society. Use it effectively. Mobilize them for self-sufficiency. Not to condemn, government doesn't do this, government doesn't do this. The youth must take responsibility to liberate themselves from capitalist exploitation. Government must be coerced to support youth programs. But we can't only rely on one single youth program and think that the NYDA will solve all youth crises or problems in our country. We must lead interventions in our communities through young people because they are still active. As the national chair was indicating, Slovo, when he joined the youth movement, the Young Communist League, at 16, already given his own power and labor to the liberation forces. Now we need to mobilize young people into this space to make sure that they can free themselves from unemployment and poverty without necessarily waiting for government. Government, of course, has a role to play. It's an obligation that they need to play to support them. Slovo was not just only a member and leader of the SACP, our general secretary, our national chairman. He was also the leader of the ANC and served in its national executive committee and led Umkhonto Wesizwe as chief of staff, the joint army of the SACP and the ANC. He contributed immensely, intellectually, to the development of our movement. He wrote extensively. And I'm very happy, Dr. Khadel, Professor Mandla, where is he? Mandla, continue the hard work of writing extensively.
Yes.
As a left-wing intellectual. But we need the left intellectuals, young workers, young professionals, young lecturers, where's our peers, Young Communist League? You mustn't leave the spaces in academic institutions to continue in that particular space and come and join the tender system outside the academic space. He must continue that space. Our peers, you must encourage him to do that, Comrade Jacob. But I think it's important to say Slovo contributed immensely. Comrade Dada spoke about Morogoro Conference and some of the role of Comrade Slovo. He indeed contributed immensely in that, and same with the Freedom Charter. And I think in joining the liberation struggle, particularly for the oppressed black majority, Slovo was advancing the principle of non-racialism. That is why he didn't feel, he decided that he wanted to be buried here with his own comrade. Because he was non-racial in character. We must commit ourselves to deepening and creating a non-racial society in South Africa. This non-racial society, or non-racialism that in our country was first introduced by the Communist Party, we were the architects of non-racialism in this country. We must lead non-racialism in practice. Today, for instance, amongst us here, cheers.
Cheers.
Amongst us here, there are few white compatriots who should have joined Comrade Joe Slovo, as we are also celebrating a comrade who was a white compatriot who fought on the side of the majority. Our movement must relook into its non-racial character that is waning deeply. The youth movement in particular, and the student movement, you are at the cusp in institutions of higher learning of engaging and remobilizing the non-racial character of our movement. Because there can be no separate societies in one country. We have to rebuild our non-racial character as a movement. At the same time, fight against continued narrow nationalism, chauvinism, and reactionary tendencies, including populist tendencies that the chair was talking about, as well as racist tendencies that are continuing in our country. That is why we must continue to condemn this recent racist behavior by some white men who have been charged with crimes when they were attacking black youth at a swimming pool in the Free State. This is unacceptable behavior. It must be condemned in the strongest terms possible. But our structures must be at the forefront to fight against racism. When we are fighting for non-racialism, it doesn't mean that we support racism. No. Non-racialism is the end of racism. So you end racism by creating a non-racial society. But in the context of South Africa, to end non-racialism, you need to tackle the economic question in our country. Because that's where the source of inequality and crisis stems from. That's where the source of colonization stems from. And if you don't tackle that issue, racism in this country will always rise above, because it will have an economic face. And the economic face will always oppress those that they employ in the sphere of economic production. The last point I want to raise, comrades, before the international section, is to talk about the SACP, the state and popular power. This question, as you know, I've heard the Young Communist League here singing about state power. Comrade Dada says he was removed from office after 25 days. I bet you his next 25 days in office will be the best 25 days. Because he will be decisive. He knows that in power You don't relax for one day without taking appropriate decision that changes things. You should have made it impossible for them to come. There should have been mass resolve after 25 days, Comrade Dada, from the masses that perhaps even new elections could have been held because of what you would have done. That is why you must see Brazil. Lula, when he came back, his attitude has changed. Because he knows you can't sit on the seat of power and play with political power. Power is not for the elite. Power is for the masses. We must exercise power to transform the lives of the masses. So we have to first understand the concept of power ourselves. The issue of the relationship of the SACP and the working class in what we call state power is part and parcel of the core tenets of the renewal and unity of our movement and the reconfiguration of the alliance. Power has not been exercised appropriately in this country. I think let's start there. We should not be complaining about political decisions that are not made. Marx or Lenin proper, but perhaps Dr. Masonde will prefer Marx because he believes Marx was this hugely integrated scholar who studied everything. But Lenin simplifies it by saying there should be no demarcation between, is a paraphrase, not a quote. There should be no demarcation between the political and economic struggle. In other words, political struggle is an economic struggle. So it's a class struggle. So a class struggle is a political struggle. So you can't have power for so long and the living conditions of the class, the majority class in society that voted you into power, do not drastically change. Even if you have measurable changes that you are making. Because in any social development, whether it's a bourgeois party in power, there will be social development, social changes there and there. But you need radical change to change the system, the structure of power. And it is that structure of power that is the capitalist structure of power that we have not tackled as this revolution. So we have to understand it in that context. So we have not exercised power appropriately because capital remained intact and the leading force, what Marx called the dominant views in society, are those of the ruling class. Capital continues to be the ruling class, the dominant force in charge of our society. So therefore we need a different posture to the articulation of power. Therefore, in delivering the political report to the 55th National Conference of the ANC in December, President Ramaphosa correctly drew attention to the processes on this matter taking place in the party. He did not mince his words, and we want to appreciate it. That's the first thing to acknowledge from that particular conference. We acknowledge that the president elevated this question of the reconfiguration of the alliance. Because as we say, power has not been exercised appropriately, we are also part of that power, albeit inadequate part of that power. So we need the reconfiguration of that power. So that's what we are talking about when we are talking about the reconfiguration of the alliance, is the reconfiguration of the exercise of political power in our country, because it is this alliance that is leading our country. The formulation, therefore, that the president used, which was not covered in the official text of the bigger report, the organizational report, was however important, which urged the ANC to pay special attention to this question in a frank manner. During this first 2 months or 3 months of this year, we will be convening a special central committee to receive a revised report on the implementation of the 15th National Congress resolution on the SACP, the state and popular power debate. That clearly articulated that inclusive in this process was our question for electoral consideration. And this is clearly articulated by our Congress that the SACP must more effectively contest elections with or without a reconfigured alliance. In other words, no, comrades. In other words, if the alliance remains not reconfigured, if there's no tangible progress towards the reconfiguration process, the SACP has taken a decision already. It's as simple as that. Therefore, the alliance, comrades, the alliance cannot exist as an ineffectual article of faith. With its reconfiguration must give play to collective leadership of the National Democratic Revolution by the alliance, based on consensus-seeking consultation and collective accountability. There's no single reason in principle why we cannot work together if we are indeed allies. Now let me say this to you and to the ANC comrades. I heard the new Secretary General, Comrade Figi. He pronounces that there are debates about reshuffle of cabinet. I do not know about that. I'm a General Secretary of the Communist Party. Where does he take that mandate? It is this kind of things that are disrespectful to us. We will not accept this kind of tendencies. Because then why are we here? Why are we in an alliance? So somebody takes decisions on their own, impose them on us? No, we are not that party. That time has come and passed. Our Congress articulated this thing clearly. It's a Congress decision. It's not personal. It's about this collective leadership. If you want the alliance, you must show appreciation for the alliance. I don't want to talk about other things because people will say the communists are angry. We are not angry. We are simply saying, let's exercise political leadership and take collective accountability. If you do it on your own, account to the people. Leave us out. But we have accepted, as Slovo had taught us, the integration of the National Democratic Revolution. We have taken responsibility for this revolution. If you go here, this Heroes Acre, this one by one, you will see many communist cadres who fell in the front line. Communist cadres. They are not just owned by a national liberation movement. They were conscious classists, class strugglers. These cadres here. You must go and watch them, see them. Some of them have even the rate. They insisted, their families insisted because they knew these were communists. They were not just in a broad national liberation struggle. So when we take responsibility for all of these things, we must also fulfill the mandate of these comrades who died here. They didn't die to have continued poverty in our country, continued domination of the capitalist system. Now, I must tell you, as we congratulate the ANC for fulfilling its, concluding its national conference, we are going to look into the economic sections of those policies that have been finalized yesterday. We have said it openly. We did not hide it to our partners. Together with our comrades in COSATU and together with the ANC itself, in fact, it started with the ANC in a bilateral that we required before the national conference of the ANC, the economic summit, the economic energy and economic summit of the alliance. We developed the framework for that jointly. It never took place. I truly believe, Comrade Alex, Dr. Mashil, we've got many doctors in the Communist Party. We truly believe, Dr. Mashil, that those considerations of the economic and energy summit of the alliance have been taken forth in this national conference of the ANC. Because we do not want to trace back our steps and mark time backward. We want to move forward. So if those have not been tackled properly in the outcome process of the ANC conference, we will engage that as the alliance. But we will reserve our independence as a Communist Party, our right to independence as the Communist Party, to act as such. At the same time, comrade, The international atmosphere is dominated by hostility. The US-NATO imperialist war that is they provoke in Ukraine is one of the many indicators of this hostility. The imperialist regimes are engaged in the same agenda here on the African continent, in the Middle East, in Latin America and in Asia. There's continued attack in Israel, by Israel on Palestine. There's continued attack on Lebanon, on Syria, by Israel, supported by the United States. At the center of this imperialist agenda is their insatiable appetite to maintain world domination and hegemony, to subordinate and control all countries of the world, and to exploit their resources and labor. We need to counter this and build a world peace movement and intensify our anti-imperialist struggle. The working class and its allies must intensify this struggle in every country. This is also the mandate of the International Communist and Workers' Movement. In our recent conference in Cuba, the meeting of communist and workers' parties of the world called for this. We did our part as the SACP. But within this framework, comrades, of continuing our international solidarity with other organizations, we need to do our part. But within this framework, we must continue to call for all end of all imperialist wars and mechanizations and their aggression in any part of the world. We therefore duly express our full solidarity with various countries in the world, especially the people of Cuba, who continue to suffer the criminal US blockade on Cuba and the continued occupation of their territory in Guantanamo Bay. We say to the US, leave Cuba alone. Don't punish Cuba just because Cuba decided to be socialist, to take care of all their people. We express our solidarity with the people of Venezuela, and we appreciate developments in Venezuela. This pseudo-president that was recognized by some European countries has now been dished by his own people, Guaido. Now Venezuela can rebuild itself, rebuild peace, rebuild its economy. And the US must bring back the money that they took from Venezuela and the money that they freezed of Venezuela in the US as well as in Europe. And must give our continued support to the socialist developments and movement in Nicaragua and to the Nicaraguan people and to the people of Bolivia and others in Latin America who are struggling against this US-led imperialist subordination, subversions, and constant attacks through the exploit of what they call the Monroe Doctrine. Of course, we have done this when we congratulated the Workers' Party of Brazil for winning the elections, but we must congratulate President Lula for taking office and making very clear strategic pronouncement about Brazil's new posture and perspectives that have encouraged and re-energized the left in the world. These efforts must be reciprocated by South Africa as a member of the BRICS countries. We express our solidarity to the people of Western Sahara who will be joining their Congress of Polisario in the next few weeks, because the people of Western Sahara continue to fight against Moroccan occupation. And this, we have now realized at international level, Spain has rejoined the effort to retain its administrative authority of the Western Saharan territory, the old colonial authority. This is unacceptable, and we must create now a new posture against the Spanish government, particularly towards their posture on Western Sahara. We must support our comrades in Palestine against the continued occupation and exploitation by Israel, as well as to express our solidarity with the Kurds against oppression in various countries in the Middle East. And we must really call for the release of Abdullah Öcalan by Turkey and express our support for a peaceful resolution of the Kurdish question. This question cannot be ignored. Over 55 million people stateless, who are not fighting necessarily for a state per se, but who are fighting for their rights to be recognized, to speak their own language, which are denied in some other countries, including in Turkey. Irrespective of Turkey's posture, particularly against imperialist regimes today, but it must release Abdullah Öcalan and recognize the Kurdish people to express themselves freely in their own country. In Southern African region and Africa at large, having raised this question about Western Sahara, we have an imperative as the Communist Party to build the Africa Left Network and support our people in Swaziland who are fighting for democracy in Swaziland. We must condemn continued terrorism and attacks of the people in southern Cameroon by the Cameroonian government and call for peace in Cameroon, particularly in southern Cameroon. With all of these, comrades, and many others that we will say, the last point we want to raise is that the Communist Party must join the rest of our people, the working class, in resolving the problems that we face. We must not be what we characterize as the Kevin Carter syndrome. Kevin Carter was the photographer who took that famous photo that won the Pulitzer Prize Award in 1994 of a Sudan girl who was dying, a small child who was dying of hunger. This photo was depicting this deeply emaciated child who was waiting under a tree when his parents were going to look for food at the UN food program. And he took this picture. As he was taking this picture, is because in this picture is this small child dying, and there's a vulture behind this child. And he went up to 10 meters to take the picture. And the vulture was waiting for the child to die. He took this picture. After he won this international award, he was asked many a times, what happened to the child? And this issue forced him into depression, and he ultimately died. But he was worried by this question because he did chase the vulture after taking the picture. But the people wanted to know what finally happened to the child, and he could not account for it. And he died of depression. Now, I call that the Kevin Carter syndrome. Now, in our case, so he had depression and then committed suicide. He died in a literal of a suicide. In our case, we are saying the Communist Party must not look into problems and do nothing about them. All our cadres in our communities, in every street, in every block, in every community, don't look at the problem and walk away from it and adopt this Kevin Carter syndrome. And we become good intellectuals talking about the crisis of statistics. We use them to depict the reality. But when we talk about statistics of people who are living in hunger, we must understand we are talking about human beings who are feeling the pain, the pangs of hunger. So we have to tackle these programs. Our 2023 program of action, which we are inviting you to participate in, it's a program that calls for action to rebuild a powerful socialist movement of the workers and the poor in our communities, with the Communist Party at the forefront. We are calling for a party of activists. We are therefore saying in this process we also need to rebuild the new cadre of the Communist Party, the cadre of the socialist movement. Because this is a new task that we are giving ourselves. And to rebuild a new socialist movement, to have this cadre of the socialist movement, we equally require a cadre of the renewal of the movement. And therefore, these cadres of the Communist Party must take this responsibility. We want to say to Comrade Joe Slovo, your efforts were not in vain. We are here, we'll continue the mission until the socialism in this country, until capitalism has been turned upside down, the masses can rule themselves. Amandla! Forward to socialism, forward! Long live the entire spirit of Comrade Joe Slovo, long live! Thank you very much.
We'll continue on savings. I thought I saved you time.
Amandla! 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 My mother was a kitchen, and my father was a god. Oh, that's why I'm a communist, I'm a communist. Oh, my mother was a kitchen, oh, my father was a god. Oh, that's why I'm a communist. Oh, I'm a communist. Oh, that's why I'm a. Oh, that's why. Oh, that's why. Amandla! Amandla! Comrades! Ulimi lwamakomanisa lutolikwa. It's very straightforward. Comrade GS, thanks very much for that powerful and straightforward message. And the line of march. Very powerful point. When a communist comes across a problem, don't run away from it. Seek to address and resolve it. Very powerful message. Also, Comrade General Secretary, we are saying, don't blame me if maybe I add a little bit. We are saying 2023 is the year to resolve the issue of the reconfiguration of the alliance. This year and no further. Because if we don't resolve it this year, we are then in trouble. Reconfiguration is not about elections, but we have to resolve it this year. Now, I want to be naughty a little bit to say, what is it that the GS was saying, and give all of you the tasks. District secretaries, branch secretaries, I hope you're listening. Okay. I want to summarize what the GS was saying by quoting from the Communist Manifesto. A short part is the part which talks about Marx and Engels saying, the bourgeoisie say we must not abolish private property. Then Marx and Engels, they say, I quote, it has been objected that upon the abolition of private property, all work will cease and universal laziness will overtake us. According to this, bourgeois society ought long ago to have gone to the dogs through sheer idleness. For those of its members who work, acquire nothing, and those who acquire anything do not work. Unquote. If uningezwakali ngicela ukunika ke o-secretary, go and discuss it in your branches. On the 6th of January 2024, we will start with a short report back on what this means. Let me just quote the latter part again. For those of the members of bourgeois society who work, acquire nothing. And those who acquire anything do not work. Those who do not work are the ones who acquire something. Those that work, they acquire nothing. That's at the heart of the message of the General Secretary. As I discussed, so reporter back on the 6th of January 2024. So Kalange report back no bad of what this means and this analysis. Ikhabulu, Siyabonga General Secretary. Comrades, let me take this opportunity to thank our GS. We have a very clear line of march. But let me also thank, comrades, all of you. Various layers of leadership, the Central Committee of the SACP and its officials, the leadership of COSATU, the leadership of the ANC, most importantly, the leadership also of the YCL, our new leaders, and all of you comrades who have been here. We want to say to you, thank you very much for having come to honor Comrade Joe Slovo, Comrade JS. Now, what we are going to do then in conclusion, we are just pleading with you that you just be patient for a short time now for us to do what we normally do, for the leadership to actually lay the wreaths on the grave of Comrade Joe Slovo. I don't want to waste time, but there's a story, I'm going to say a story, of a worker who knocked off at 11 ebusuku, somewhere near Emmarentia in Johannesburg. And my Dlula, kukhona cemetery okuthiwa West Park Cemetery. When he was going past there, as workers normally knock off late, at 12 midnight, he comes across an old man who is carrying a small bag. Hey, this young worker say, old man, it's 12 midnight. There is crime all over. What are you doing here? The old man says, oh, my son, I'm just moving from my home that I've been at for the past few years here at West Park Cemetery. I'm moving now to go and put up place in my new home at Avalon Cemetery. Because I also hear Ziyadume Avalon, no Slovo bakhona Avalon. You can imagine ukuthi wabaleka waze wamngaka lo msebenzi. Ukuthi kanti ubani lo engihlangana naye. Because the old man is moving from boring West Park to exciting Avalon Cemetery. Comrade Deputy Chair, over to you then to handle the laying of the wreath for us. On my part, comrades, I'm signing off. I also hope members of the media captured my quotation. Please discuss it in the newsroom as well. Thank you very much. As workers, it's very important that you do that. Over to you, Comrade Mandla.
Amanda, thank you very much, Comrade National Chair, Dr. Bladen Zimande. Comrades, the last part of the program is, as the National Chair said, is the laying of the wreaths. And I'm going to request the following leaders. We would have loved for everyone who's here to have something to, but we are going to ask the leaders that who are here to do it on our behalf. I'm going to start with, if you can come in the following order, comrades, in the interest of time. The General Secretary, Comrade Solima Paila, will be the first one to have an opportunity to lay the wreath. He will be followed by the National Chair, Dr. Bladen Zimande. You will also have a chance to lay the wreath. Dr. Nzimande will be followed by our National Treasurer, Comrade Joyce, who will also have an opportunity. Comrade Joyce will be followed by the first and the second deputy General Secretary Comrade Matala Masubu and Dr. David Masondo. They will share, Comrade Victor. Dr. Masondo and Comrade Matala will share. Then they will be followed by Comrade Tulas Nglesi, the Deputy Chair, who will also have an opportunity to share with the first Deputy President of COSATU, Comrade Mike. Comrade Mike, please do come, don't delegate. They will negotiate. This is an opportunity, Comrade Mike and Comrade Tulas, to negotiate the wages. Comrade Tada, is Comrade Tada still here? Yes. Comrade Tada, please also, on behalf of the ANC, you will have a wreath, as well as Comrade Mzwandi. But you have a new name from Gauteng, Comrade Mzwandi. You heard the PS gave you a new name. This is going to be a new name of Gauteng. I think I've called everyone comrades. So these are the comrades who will have an opportunity to lay the wreath in the memory of. No, they are sharing. Yes, you can. Yeah, you can take one of these comrades. Yes, GS, you can please lead us.
Taking pictures, taking pictures, taking pictures as well. Taking pictures. Taking pictures. Taking pictures.
Comrades, thank you very much. Let's thank the leadership for doing that task. This was the last item in the agenda. The national chair has thanked everyone. We have now come to the end of